Alright guys, we are outside about to do some light tests. So I'm going to be comparing the Sofirn SC18 against the Lumintop D2. It's actually the flashlight I compared the last Sofirn light that I tried against. So I'm going to try each of them on low. So right here we have the Lumintop D2 on low. Now you can see that it just hits that tree. That's about 12.5 meters in front of my deck here. And then I'm going to switch to the low mode of the Sofirn. You can tell that the low mode is quite a bit brighter and more robust, and I find it actually has quite a bit more spill as well. As always, I find on these the camera doesn't pick up as much light as I'm seeing with my eye, so I would say you get almost 10 feet on either side of that tree of usable light that I can see detail in the grass and the things that are in the yard, which is pretty great. So if I crank it up to medium, now you see that that tree is much more illuminated, and now I can shine and hit that fence. The fence back there is about 26.5 meters. I measured all these distances yesterday in preparation for this. And that you can hit those trees way back there beyond the fence. That's from the deck here, about 48 meters, 157 feet to that tree line back there. And here's the medium mode on the Sofirn. So I'll switch back and forth. So you can see this is the Lumintop again. Sofirn. I'm impressed when I was playing with this the other night as well, and kind of in preparation, that the Sofirn seems to throw just as far, if not in this mode a little further, and maintains a better spill. So let's go up to high mode on the Lumintop. So you can see that that back row of trees there is very well illuminated, and I can see all the way through the row of trees. There's probably about 6 rows of trees in the very back there. I'm not sure how well that comes through on the camera, but there's a second field way behind all of those trees, and you can see pretty much to the end of the trees, which is very nice. Okay, there is the high mode on the Sofirn. Same deal. I can see all the way to the end of the trees way back there, and anything in the yard in front of me is just super lit up. Now, one thing I noticed that I wanted to talk about when I was using this the other night is the Sofirn, as you would expect as a small pocket light, does get pretty hot if you leave it on for a while. I can already feel it getting warm in my hand in this low mode. Now luckily on high mode I found that it got not quite stinging or uncomfortable hot, but more than just warm in the hand, somewhere between the two. But it tapered off at around that level of hotness, and it's probably about 80 degrees out tonight, maybe 75. So it's not incredibly hot. If it were a very hot night, like 90 degrees, or you were in the desert somewhere with a hotter climate during the day, I would be reluctant to leave it in the high mode for long. But this kind of setting, I think you could probably use it for its whole runtime, and I would be okay with that if you were ever in a scenario where you needed to. Now the turbo mode gets stinging hot inside of the 30 seconds that it's rated for, and I definitely, even if it would sustain that mode for longer, wouldn't, because not only would it be uncomfortable to hold, but I would be concerned about battery degradation with that much heat going through the rest of the chamber of the flashlight. And that's to be expected on a small light like this where you don't have a whole lot of heat sinking. But as an everyday light, which is kind of the intended purpose of this, I think that's a fine trade-off. Really, if you're planning to use a really high mode for any sustained period of time and you know that in advance, you're probably planning to grab a much larger light anyway. So as an everyday light, you're probably only going to use the 2 higher modes for a few minutes at a time anyway. Let's check out the turbo mode in both of these. So this is the Lumintop in its turbo mode, about 1200 lumens. This has been my go-to light for a long time. It's a very useful spill. It's lighting up a big circle that covers most of my field of view in front of me in the immediate yard, and then the hotspot just really lights up those trees in the back really well. However, the turbo mode on those Sofirn just is wild. That blows up even those back row of trees there super bright. It always looks less bright on the camera than it is in person, but for me, like all of those trees are pretty clear. You can make out detail. If anything was back there, even 50 meters away and moving around, I would see it, and see it pretty well. It's already getting pretty hot already, just to give you a sense of how fast that happens. I am super impressed with what this Sofirn light can do on its low mode, which I'm using now just across the grass right in front of the deck here. This light has a rockin' low mode. So you can see illuminating the steps here in front of me. This is only the second light that I've had with a TIR lens, and it's really given me a respect for what that can do. And in this light, it combines really interestingly, I find, that TIR lens that normally gives you a heck of a lot of distant hotspot, combined with the real shallow bezel that this light has, ends up giving you this really cool mixture of, I think this throws every bit as well as the Lumintop does, which has a considerably bigger and wider bezel, and yet this gives you considerably wider usable light around where you are. I think that's awesome. As an everyday do-it-all kind of light, the kind of thing you'd bring with you everywhere you go, yes, this is great. I was very surprised by this, especially since it's a $17 light on Amazon. This outperforms lights that are 2 and 3 times as expensive that I've had in my collection. And what's interesting too is that Lumintop D2 light is a 21700 battery, which is a little bit bigger than the 18650 that's in this. And this still, when I was looking at the specs, has better run times. That just speaks a lot for their craftsmanship and to the power of the LED that they put in this. Now I'm going to step it up to medium mode and we'll go walking around a little bit. So again, I lament the fact that it never looks quite as bright on camera as it does to me, but hopefully you get the general idea. It looks like on my viewfinder here, you get like this circular area in front of me on the ground that's really well lit up, but not a whole lot else. In person, it is brighter in that middle, but I can actually see the grass and see the color green fairly clearly for a good arc around that also. If you were walking around some trail at night or something like that, I would be very comfortable personally using this medium mode. And quite frankly, I've walked around the property quite a few times in just the low mode, and it does a super job. And the kind of runtime you get on this light with that low mode, they have really done a great combo of features to make this light up with what it's able to give you. I would say this is probably pretty similar distance to what we were looking at in the back from the deck to that fence and row of trees. I'm standing in my driveway. That's across the street there, and the next row of trees over there. And you can see a lot of great detail and color that far around, pretty much everywhere. And then of course, since we're in a new setting, I'll just kick on the turbo mode just so that you can really see it. This is a really great blend of like the smallest 18650 light that I have ever used. It's just barely bigger and wider than my Lumintop Tool AA light that has been my go-to pocket light for a long time. It gets brighter, it heat sinks better, it has far better run times. As far as an everyday light goes, a pocket light when you're going to throw in a backpack or something, this is very useful. And the UI on it, I just think is sort of a beauty and simplicity kind of thing, because it's a one press on, one press off. You hold the button down to cycle through the modes. I'll demonstrate that here. I'm holding the button now down. Double tap to go into turbo. Triple tap to go into a strobe mode. And then if the light is off and you press and hold, it will go into a moonlight mode. Now some people I hear in other reviews say that they like a super like dim, like 1 lumen moonlight mode. Personally, I find that too little light for anything I ever want to do with it. Just like the low mode was surprisingly decent, the moonlight mode for like really close objects like this garbage can right in front of me, again, does a surprising job of giving me usable detail. And if I shine it on my feet as I walk around, it gives me plenty to not trip over things. But if I were in some kind of setting where I saw that I was going to not have any power or ability to charge this light, or in a survival scenario, whatever. If I was in a situation where I did not know how much longer I was going to need the light and I needed to preserve the battery as long as absolutely possible, that moonlight mode, even this low mode, either one, super option for that.